So the rest of us, we are on the verge. You can see last week the gas tank was like empty. Now it's a quarter filled. So hopefully we're moving better, where we've begin to understand what it means to be refueled. So what we decided last week is that really the indicator that you need to be filled, or there needs to be something, a time of season of filling, is joy. And really that's the gauge of joy. And so a lot of times we get things done, especially in church world or just in your life, you just accomplish things, but you can miss out on the joy and the journey. And I have to really be, because I'm an achiever, because I'm a driver, because I just want to get things done. One thing I've learned about myself, I'm patient with people, but not patient with tasks. Like, I want it done. If I thought of it at midnight, I want it done at 11:59, right? I just want it done because I thought about it. So there's just the idea of really understanding that we need to just really come to a place where we understand what is our gauge to know that we're enjoying this season of ministry. And especially as many of us are maybe stepping out in a faith. I think when you move into a faith area of your life, of coming to church as the first time, or to transition, and I would say all of us are in that transition. I used to think there was just a few transitions in life, but I noticed that our oldest just turned 18. It's a new transition in the Snyder family, right? How do we treat him differently, or how do we respond with other kids? Just all these things are always moving. You're moving, transitioning, and how you adjust that. And really, the evidence of where it is if joy is the product of that. And so a couple things, we made a list last week and we talked about it. So I'll just kind of remind us maybe to check your tank to see if it's full or if you need to be refueled maybe this morning. So joy in loving and helping others. If it's becoming where it's a burden and it's difficult, I think it's time to fill our lives with joy. Joy of submitting to others. If someone asks you to do something, how you respond to that. Joy of following the leaders God's placed in your life. And that can be a tough one, right? That can be a hard joy, as a boss that doesn't understand, or a parent that doesn't understand. And so how we respond to that. The joy of serving others. The joy of forgiving others. And so as you hear this, if maybe the Spirit of God touches your heart, it's like, man, I'm just not have a heart for service. I'm just tired. That's one of the things that helps me understand where I'm at, is if I'm irritable or if things just bother me and I can't get over it, like I really have to work on that. It's time for me to spend some time with Jesus, some time to step out of the game for a moment and get alone with the Lord and deal with that. The joy of doing the will of God. Of trusting God, and maybe in the low times or the times where nothing's moving. And a lot of times when we follow God's will, there's an excitement of the start, but when we start to move that way, usually it's not as quick as we expected. It's not as easy as expected. Joy of the journey, really that's kind of a joy of struggles. And then a couple things that last week brought up was the fullness or the fruitlessness of life. If there's something you're doing, you just feel like there's no evidence of fruit in that, I think that's a good indicator. And then unanswered prayers. If you feel like you're just not getting your prayers answered, you're praying to God, you're asking God, I think it's time to refuel, to get right with God. And so last week we talked about the word abide, and just in a few there was 10 times he spoke about abide. Jesus said, if you're going to abide with me, you need to dwell with me. You need to live with me. There's that idea of being in presence with God. And so that's what's going to fill your tank. And so reminding ourselves that it's really the hope that we have of the gospel. That's what helps me. That's really, honestly, when I have great days, I just remind myself the gospel, and that levels me back to reality, that I need Jesus. And when I have really bad days, I just level myself back up to the gospel and recognize it's the gospel that I am never as good. I am what I am, and Jesus loves me anyway, right? And so he loves me. He died for me. It's God's grace that I'm in this race, right? It's because of God's grace. And so this is what he says in John 15:11. He says, these things I spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. So, according to Jesus' words, we absolutely can live a joyful, loving life. Like, we can have joy in our life, even in hard, difficult times. Even in challenging moments, there can be a sense of joy. And this is not happiness. Happiness is fleeting, right? Happiness can come and go momentary. You're happy one moment and you're happy or a sad 1 minute. But joy is the knowing that Jesus is in control, the gospel is the center, and God is working in the mess of our lives. And so it just helps us out. So again, maybe today you're like, I really do need to refuel. That's one thing I've discovered in my own life, that this was really speaking to me, that I have been a little bit more irritable than I want to be. I'm maybe trying to drive things where I should just let God or shepherd things. And so this has really been an indicator for me that I need to spend some time to really practice some of these things. I've been practicing, but really being intentional and allowing Jesus to speak to me. So one way to discover that really is recognizing that your life has purpose and meaning. That this isn't just random or activity, like this is not accident. God really has a plan for your life. And Jesus demonstrates that as he came, and in 3 years he had a quite an amazing ministry. But he says a few things that talks about the meaningfulness of his work and really the urgency of it. And so in John 6, verse 38 says, "For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." And so what Jesus did is he's aligned himself with what God has for him. And that's what the gospel does. The gospel aligns your life to purpose and meaning. The gospel recognizes that we're not good in ourselves, that we need God to do something for us. And so Jesus recognized, he says, I'm not here to do my will, but God's will. And so if you want to have meaning in your life, really that's where the gospel expands your purpose. You have meaning because of what Jesus did. My value is not based on my life or personality or the things that I do or don't do. My value is based on God giving me value and the gospel message that God redeemed me and brought me into purpose and meaning with his life, with my life. And so I really that's the meaningfulness, that when you do the Lord's work, and again, we'll talk more about what that work is, but that's really the heart of it. So, and then verse 9 in chapter 4, John 9:4 says, we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Really the sense of urgency. Night is coming when no one can work. And so there's an urgency, and it's hard to manufacture urgency. A lot of times it's easy to get in a low and just kind of get used to kind of coasting, if you will. But if you're going to do meaningful work, it's going to take energy. And ministry takes energy. If you're going to push back darkness, if we're going to be lights in dark places, if we're going to stand in moments where it's conflict is surrounding us, when you're in those moments, it's going to take your energy. It's going to take your joy. Because anytime, again, just have a little conflict with your wife or your kids or a friend, somebody close to you, man, it steals your whole day, right? You just think about that all day. It can take your joy. You lose the day, and you can lose meaning in that. So when you're following Christ, when you're on mission for Jesus, there is a tax and energy. So a couple things have happened. So I've kind of got into running this last few years of my life, and I've never been a runner before. But one thing that I've always had trouble and really trying to figuring out is how to fuel while you run, right? Was you making sure I got enough energy to finish the race or finish the course I want to have. And so making sure I have the right water, making sure I have the right electrolytes, all that stuff has been a challenge. And so I think the same thing as some of you are just starting this race, and you've been coming to church, and you're serving in different areas, and you're feeling the weight of what ministry is. Like, there is a weight that comes with ministry. There's an urgency, there's meaning in it, but there is a weight, and with that weight takes energy. And so we have to mature. We have to mature in that, and the way we mature is by spending time with God, by being around faithful Christians, those that have walked a little ahead of us, and be encouraged, and really even to be teachable in those moments. And so there's some other things that go on with that, but as we think through this, as we walk through this text today, we want to be reminded that if we're on mission for Jesus, that this ministry is meaningful, but also takes energy, and so we need to recover from that and find ways to do that. So purposeful work matters and can be sustained through pauses and prayer. And so I despise busy work. Like, I am a busy guy. And when someone says, I'm super busy, like, I don't really I don't think so. There's people that are far busier than me, so that triggers me a little bit. But but just be busy work. So I would see that in school. Your teacher had a down day, and so they're like, you know what? Just do the odds of all the math problems. And it really wasn't moving. You weren't learning anything new. They just didn't want to deal with you, right? Or your mom and dad are just tired of you, and they're like, go clean your room, right? Or just go do something. Just get out of my hair. Just go be busy doing something, but don't be busy around me. Now, I despise just and really probably goes back to even we would always plan things or do busy, and then as it wouldn't really matter in the end of it, right? Just doing something just to do it just never makes sense to me. And so I want to have purpose and meaning to all our work. So if you spend time with me, you would know that I'm always talking about what the results, like, is this moving us forward? Is this pushing us a direction? And I think since I've been here at Living Hope Church, I really tried that we just don't do things just to do it. It really has a reason. And we're not just having gatherings just to have gatherings. We don't add church events just to add church events. We want to have, I'm not looking for more for my schedule, and you're not looking to put more on your schedule. We want to be purposeful and meaningful in that. And so what I do love is busyness with meaning, with purpose. So purposeful busyness matters. Like, I think there is effort and energy that is worth doing, and sometimes it can seem like a nothing. Like, again, today, being at church this morning, is this just meaningless, or is this purposeful? Does this matter? How do we know this matters? Well, we were told to gather, so we know scripturally we're to gather together, we're to encourage each other. Now, what we make of it really is how we value it. If you're just like, man, hope he doesn't we hope he hurries up a little bit, he's running a little long today, so that matters. So what you think of it really brings meaning and thought to it. So I think of a couple things, or just a couple examples of that. One would be like a meeting. So if you are part of what we call multibars, our leadership, we have a meeting at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and really it's just a meeting. Like, there's nothing special about it. We just talk about what's coming up, what already happened, really deal with, just kind of see. But in the scope of things, it really matters because it matters to everybody that says that I want to be a part of it. And as we bring meaning to it, it brings meaning to the event, and then it matters. So when I think of things, and again, you could take about anything you do, doing dishes. Does it really matter, or does it really matter? Right? And so how do you put value to it? Now, I think there is value to it because I don't want to live in a sloppy kitchen, right? I don't want to eat off of sloppy plates. So there's value to that. And so when you think of something you're doing, so everything, when you begin to put the gospel into your life, everything you do has value. Especially as we look at last week, he said, you can do nothing without me. Jesus said you can do nothing. So if you are sleeping has value, eating has value, relationships, television, all the things that you, is it wasting my time? Is it bringing me meaning and purpose? And so Jesus gives really an illustration in the Gospel of Mark. We see this really clearly on a very busy day of ministry. And so what I would tell you, and many of you are like, well, I'm not in ministry. We're removing the veil of sacred and secular work. All life matters, right? Like, all life matters. And when one day we're going to stand before God, and we're going to be given account for our time, our talents, and our treasure. And so it doesn't matter if our time was at work, working at Chick-fil-A, or if our time is serving at church, if our time is swimming or playing. Like, we're going to give an account, and so we can bring value to everything we do. And so purposeful work matters and can be sustained through pauses and prayers. So let me go a little quicker. So in Mark 1, verse 21, 22, Jesus was teaching. So here Jesus begins his earthly ministry, and what we'll see often is immediately we see the urgency of Jesus doing these things, okay? He says, and they went to Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he had taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. And so here he was exercising. It was his ministry had started, and so he was exercising his ministry and teaching. Now, I'm telling you, teaching takes energy. Making sure, it takes energy. And especially his type of teaching took authority. he was exercising authority, and so that was bringing conflict, which was causing distress among the hearers. And so he was in this moment of energy, and so it was meaningful. And so they were astonished. Verse 23, and immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. So he came just to do a normal teaching event like he normally did, and here he was. There was this unclean spirit. And so here was spiritual warfare. And it says, and he cried out, what have you done? What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? So if all of a sudden somebody that probably it would have been a very unusual situation yells out and says, oh my gosh, you have authority even in the spiritual realm, right? So Jesus' authority is coming out. Have you come to destroy us? Now, if I was teaching, if someone all of a sudden said that, now imagine if they said it in like a really like, rah, 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 like that's how I imagine it, but it may not have been. But again, that is language that brings conflict and confusion, and like that would have been an eventful day and a meaningful. So here, what does he do? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him, saying, be silent and come out of him. Now I'm telling you, that took energy and boldness. And when the unclean spirit convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice came out of him. And so in verse 27, and they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, what is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all surrounding region of Galilee. And so here we see Jesus ministering. He was teaching. He was dealing with spiritual warfare, conflict, if you will. And so a lot of times when we are just imagine, so go home this week today and start to share about what God spoke to you about bringing your joy back, and maybe apologize to somebody and just see what people around you are going to do when you start to be right with God and be right with the other people. It's amazing how we are okay with people being wrong with God and wrong with each other, but when people start getting right with God and right with each other, that makes it a little uncomfortable in our lives. And so that takes energy. How many of you done the right thing and you get the wrong response? You're like, I'm trying to do the right thing. You're trying to you have a conversation, you'll tell somebody about what God has done in your life and God could do in their life, and they don't want to talk to you, and they're offended that you said it, and you brought up some topics they don't want to deal with. And I'm telling you, it takes energy. If we follow what we say we want to be, is we want to walk with people in life, that takes energy, my friend. You're like, no, it don't. Come walk with me. I'll show you. It's a long day and a busy day and a hard day, okay? So believe me, I know what I'm talking about. So not only was he teaching and confronting evil spirits, he was also healing. And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon, Andrew and James and John. And now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with fever. And immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and fever left her, and she began to serve them. And so, what a beautiful picture here. Again, so Jesus just got done teaching. He just got done, a great conflicting event took place in the middle of that congregation. People, and he's wore out, I imagine, right? Like that would be a very stressful, high energy moment. He goes, and all of a sudden his friends, who he cares about, say, my mother-in-law is ill. And so he's walking into a traumatic moment, a difficult situation where grief and concern, which takes energy. So here he is doing ministry as he's facing these different things. And it's one thing you're facing your own. He's facing the confusion and anxiety of others. And so here he is. He's healing. He's teaching. And so verse 32, and in the evening at sundown, so this is an all-day adventure. Sundown, they brought to him all who were sick and opposed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick in various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. And so we see this very busy day, a very energy draining day. So something amazing happened while he was teaching. And that brought, everybody's like, hey, man, I have a friend that's hurting, that's sick, and I need to get them to Jesus as well. And so all day long. And so a lot of times we have busy days. And so our days may look different. But maybe if you're a nurse or you're a teacher or you're a bus driver, whatever you do, a mechanic, That is your ministry. That is where God has gifted you in talent and trades and given you abilities to go to do the best job you could do to maybe fix a thing, but you can also reach and connect to the people God has placed you there. And so I think some of us probably need to recognize that my work has meaning, that my life has meaning, and God has doing a work in me so he can place me in various places. Maybe you have some health concerns and you're about to go to doctors and to different situations where you're going to get tests. That is your ministry in that season. Now, it's not an easy ministry. It's not pleasant, but even as Jesus taught and healed, there was opportunity. I remember a family that had gone through a heartache. Their child was dying, but you walk in their room and you'd feel the joy of Jesus in this room, so much so that people would come down the hall, they would talk to them, and they would just want to be encouraged. And they're facing the most traumatic moment. So in your sorrow could be where God wants to use you, in your transitions, in your difficulties. But how do you do it? You got to refuel. You got to spend time with the Lord. And so if Jesus poured out, and many of you are pouring out in different ways. Many of you are serving God, and you're like, man, why is this so draining? Because ministry takes energy. It's a long day. A lot of times, I don't know what I've done all day, but I know I'm really tired, and I go to sleep. And just the emotional roller coaster of the highs and lows of people, the concerns and the weight of people, the hope that, and I'm not Jesus, and neither are you, and so we don't have the power in some ways, but we have access to it as we pause and pray. So what did Jesus do? Long day, and gives us an example, and I'm getting to the point of the message here in a moment. Jesus rested and renewed himself. So I don't know about you, but if Jesus himself had a season where he rested and renewed, I think I need to begin to practice that myself. Now, one thing that happens with spiritual disciplines is you can have no discipline at all, get saved, and start practicing it, and then you become this legalistic jerk about everybody else not having disciplines. That's not what I want to do here, okay? I think if you've matured, if you are practicing, this is work. And so we want to give yourself grace. I want you to really begin to understand that the disciplines that God had, like Jesus, I think he practiced them for 30 years. And this is something that takes practice. This is something that takes effort. I've always struggled for many, many years, and I still do struggle. There's seasons and moments that I don't always nail it and make it right, but this really is a rhythm that we want to shoot for and help you. And so it says, rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed. So he had a long day. What does he do? He gets up early. He departed from the people. You got to get away from people. And in our day in society, you got to get away from your phone. Our phones are ruining our lives. They are. We spend so much time consumed. I'm guilty. Just put your phone away in another room for like 2 hours. And just every time you think about your phone or trying to check your phone, put a little mark on a piece of paper. You would be shocked of how many times. There was one day I decided to put this program, and I accidentally locked my phone down for 8 hours, and I couldn't figure out how to get it back on. I almost had a panic attack thinking, my gosh, what am I going to do? The world can operate without me knowing about it, right? Again, it's just something. But he departed. He went out to a desolate place. We have to begin to, if we are going to have meaningful work, we got to be present in the place we live. God didn't call us to go. If God called you to go somewhere else, I think he'd send you. What he wants you to live is in this community, in this neighborhood, with the people that he's around today. He wants you to be present. He wants you to be in your family. He wants you to be there. And so I would just challenge you, just encourage you to begin to not to just, we're getting rid of phones, just all of a sudden take all the phones away. That's not going to happen. But begin to think through, where's my priorities? Do I have a space in my life where I'm in a desolate place? And he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. So he was away from even those that needed him. They searched for him, and they found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. The demand for you, again, if you start to live for God and you start to make a difference in people's lives, you're going to be sought out. People are going to want to know more about what God's doing in your life. People are going to want to be with you. They're going to want to know the joy. If you get refueled, they're going to want to be a part of that. And so he says, everyone is looking for you. And he said to them, let us go on to the next towns. that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. And he went throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and in other places. And so we see that in Mark 6, it gives us another idea that not only Jesus once had renewed himself, but he invited others to be rested and renewed. And so in verse 31, he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." So Jesus is inviting us, he invited his disciples to rest a while. It says, "For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat." So there's a pause that needs to take place. That's what I'm really trying to get to, is there's a pause. As you do activity, and we at Living Hope Church, we will find 10 things for you to do. And I say go as far as you can. I think if 10 things ain't enough, we got 12. If 12 ain't enough, we can give you some activity to do. But really the main part of this is really to make sure that you are abiding or refueling or renewing yourself in Christ. And the only way I know to do that, is by separating myself from people that I love and care about, and get alone in a desolate place away from all the busyness and listen to God. Listen to God. That's the only way. Now, again, it's hard. It's hard work. It's hard because we might miss out, especially in the FOMO days, right? FOMO, like, oh my gosh, we might miss out on something. The world may come to it. I think the world's going to be fine without us. Like, I really do. You know what? One day that the world will be without you, and it'll probably go on without you, right? Like, I truly believe that. It's going to go on fine. We'll be like, whoa. And so I think it really is an opportunity for us to begin to rest. So finally, Jesus also invites us to come and rest and be renewed. He says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." So it's not only and again, I'm telling you, if you're serving God, and I've just found in my own spirit, I have to begin to get better at finding those places where I can rest. And so I'll give you some practical ways to do that. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, and I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my joy is easy, my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." So I say all that is work takes energy. Meaningful work takes energy. And so God has called all of us to meaningful work. All of it, everything you do. So as you leave here today, there's something meaningful. There's a purpose that you do. And so the best way I know to do that is to be present, be prayerful, and be as pleasant as you possibly can. But being present, being in that moment. And so being in that moment, here's a few things to consider as we find rest. Add meaning and purpose to your work. So some of you tell me, well, I'm just a dishwasher, or I'm just a stay-at-home mom, or I'm just a plumber, or I'm just an electrician, or I'm just whatever. I'm just a student. Listen, God has you in this season, in this time. This is where you're at. It's amazing when you're just present in that moment, how much meaning it can have. You know, right now, this is just another day, just a Sunday morning, just almost 11, right? Just a preacher going a little longer than he should, right? But the idea is I'm right here, listen, sharing what God has called me to do, spent all week praying, seeking God. This moment matters. And if this moment matters, spending it with your newborn matters. Spending it with your wife matters. Spending it with your friends matter. And it can have meaning and purpose if we add meaning and purpose to it. And how do you do that? You line it up to the mission and mandate of Scripture. You go on mission. God has given you a job, a career, a space where you can love people where they're at, where you can teach people, where you can heal people, where you can confront people, where you can show and share the love and hope of Christ. God has placed you. If I was God, I'd be like, I need some people that are in this school system. And so I would handpick people that love God and love neighbors, and I'd put them in that school system to love God and love neighbors. If I was God, I would put a plumber in a place where plumbers could hear the gospel, or electricians or framers, or I would put someone, I might say, you know what? I need those doctors and lawyers, or I need doctors and nurses to hear about it. So I'm going to give this person a gift of sickness so they can go share the hope to those people that are far from me. Your life matters, and you have meaning and purpose. And if you want to waste your life, and I'm telling you, our phones and our technology are wasting our lives. We can consume hours and hours. I'll share. I spent like 8 hours one day watching people mow their lawn. just zooming in, and I wasn't even saw. I was just like, whoa. I was like, that's nothing. Why don't I go grab my mower and mow 10 people's yards? Right? Like that's work, that's meaningful. It would make a difference. What if we unleashed you to this morning and you walked out and you said, no, my life matters, it has meaning, it has purpose, and where God leads me this week, and it may be a whirlwind, it may be a busy day like Jesus had, but it has meaning. And so how do you keep that? So add meaning and purpose to your work. You do that. Next, we see create space in your life for rest and renewal. I've really, really struggled, and this is my workaholicism comes in. So everywhere I've worked has always been kind of a demanding season, and so I just probably my own achiever and my own value is based on this. But a lot of times, if I don't add something, there's a part of me that doesn't feel like I'm doing anything, and so I really struggle with this. So what I've had to do is I call my God space is I just get up earlier like Jesus did. And I've tried to find space. Now, not always. It's not this real dramatic morning. It looks like Sean making coffee and oatmeal. And so I have coffee and oatmeal with God. And you're like, whoa, what a weirdo. Like I'm due. My God, it's me, and I'm making my oatmeal. Ooh, too much oatmeal. I wish God could eat half the oatmeal. I always make too much. But anyway, I make coffee, and I kind of stumble around. I listen to the Bible because I'm really sleepy, and if I start reading, I go to sleep. But I create space. And in that space, I'm telling you, sometimes it's so sweet, I never want to leave it. I'll get distracted, but the enemies of that space is my phone and my mind. And so what I do is I put a paper by me or something, and if something comes to my heart, I just write it down so I don't have to worry about it. I try to spend time in present. And so really, I'm telling you, living in the present, in the moment, in that minute by minute, really allowing God to speak to me, reading scripture, finding whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be long. I've just come to the place, honestly, that if I could spend, again, just think about it. And again, I probably is more convicting than I want it to be, but 5 minutes with God could change the world, right? Like, so how little do I'm just thinking, if God would Moses met with God and his face shined, right? Like, transformation can take place. And so I just want a space where God has blessed me. So I'm going to go a little faster. I know a little long. So spiritual work requires rest for refueling. So if you are pouring out and you're losing your joy, you're going to find yourself a miserable person. Spiritual work requires rest for refueling. You have to find seasons of rest. So I try to take 1 day a week. My wife really helps me in that. So 1 day a week, I try to spend time with God, do evaluation of my own heart and life, but I try to spend an hour a day. I try to spend 2 days a month, or just really trying to focus on my spiritual health. And then a week or 2 weeks, a quarter, that could be with family. That's just really a week, especially a week, just vacations, just finding something to renew. Love something, other things that you can pour your heart and mind into. And so I just encourage you. Jesus enjoyed fellowship and love with others. Give grace to yourself. Give grace to you. Jesus does. And so as you push towards this, give grace to yourself. Give grace. Like, maybe you don't make it today, but tomorrow you will, right? Like, or maybe when you remember that you didn't do it then. But give yourself some grace. I think that's really important. That's really been hard for me because I'm kind of a jerk to myself. Like, I'm nice to other people, but not to myself. And some of you are like, I don't know if you're that nice to other people. I'm probably not as nice as I think I am to other people, but I'm really not nice to me at all. So give grace to yourself. And then finally, find a rhythm that works for you. It's about really finding this rhythm. My schedule is not your schedule. Your schedule is not my schedule. My kids are getting a little older. If you have little kids, you cannot follow the script that I have. You have to find your own. You have to really begin to practice this. And so many of us, again, I would say, even myself, how do we know that we need to be refilled? Because our joy, right? Like, the joy is empty. We're not enjoying the journey that God's placed us in. We're doing a lot of ministry activities, but we lost the joy and the purpose and the meaning why we're doing it. We're just trying to get it done. And I don't want to be in that space. I want to serve with meaning and purpose. I want to follow God. I want to use my life because, you know what? Time is short, and this is coming to an end. And it may not be an end where Jesus comes back. Maybe it's an end of my life. Maybe it's an end of my ministry in this area. Maybe it's the end of something, right? Like everything comes to an end. And so I want to be as purposeful and intent as I possibly can. And so I would encourage you, find a rhythm that works for you. And a lot of times we want to live and let other people just tell us what our rhythm is. And I'm telling you, one of the beautiful secrets of life is discovering that yourself. You were wired and created a certain way that God speaks to you. And you get to discover how God best speaks to you. And now it'll align with Scripture and it'll align with knowing God, but you get to discover that. What a journey. As the more I get to understand the way God wired me and what God's purpose and meaning to my life and why he made me and all those things, like it brings value and meaning to everything that I do and say. And so I just encourage you. And so purposeful work matters and can be sustained through pauses and prayers. And so I just encourage you, find some space. We live in a day that we will find 5 minutes and cram it full of a bunch of junk. And so I wanted, and again, maybe that means to do an evaluation of your life, begin to start to think of your time and how you use your time. What are you doing? And if you find yourself this morning, it's like, man, I'm in a dead-end job. Like, I would begin to bring some narrative and some purpose, meaning God placed you there on purpose. Maybe it's a job for a season, but God has you there for a purpose, and you can make the most of your space in that. So let me pray. And again, as the musicians come, we're grateful for you this morning. I know there's a lot here this morning to kind of take away, and I really want, again, I think this is important for where we are for this summer season. We're about to go into a busy season of a lot of push activity. Let's not just make it something to do or get done. Let's add purpose and meaning and value to it. And how do we do that? We spend some time with the God of creation and allow him to lead and direct us. If Jesus did it, he encourages disciples and he invites us. Come unto me, all that are weary and heavy laden. Maybe you've been working real hard for Jesus and you've missed that joy of Jesus. And so I want to pray for you, and we want to sing together. And God, we want to walk with you where you're at. Many of you are exercising new steps. This is a new phase of life for you. You're taking bigger steps than you ever have. We want to encourage you. We want to keep you. We want to help you. We want you to be healthy and happy. And so we want you to really enjoy the journey that God has for you, even in the difficulty. And so I pray for you this morning. God, we just ask you, God, that you'd help us to not only feel the weight and feel the responsibility, but God, let us leave that weight to you. Lord, ministry is work, but it's a work that is light and not heavy laden. It's not a burden. There's no taskmasters. It's a joy. And really that joy comes because we know you and have a relationship with you. You restore us. You are our source of hope and joy. And God, I'm sorry for making it anything other than walking with you. Lord, you will bring people in my life this week. You bring activities in my life this week. And I pray that I would take every one of them serious and use it as meaningful work to give you honor and praise and glory. I pray for all that are here this morning. I pray that some of them will be finishing up school. Some of them will be starting their summer break. I pray, God, that we would begin to think through our healthy rhythms, that we might be a blessing to you. Lord, and the result of all this, that we be refueled with purpose and meaning and on mission for you. And while we do that, we have the best time of our life. There'd be nothing else we'd want to do. And God, as we close this service, as we finish this time, we just want to meet with you. And we ask as we leave here today that we'd be on mission for you. And we enjoy all that you've done. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. If you'd stand with us and we'll sing.